3 days before the life-changing moment, Jack Reynolds stood in his walk-in closet, staring at clothes that felt foreign to him now. Jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and worn leather boots. His hands shook slightly as he picked them up, realizing he had made a decision that at once seemed impossible. He was going undercover in his own restaurant. The idea had come to him in the dead of night, during one of those sleepless hours when the weight of his empire seemed unbearable. The employee reviews had been harsh, filled with anonymous complaints about his restaurants. Complaints he had once dismissed as the ramblings of disgruntled workers. But now, something gnawed at him. If they were willing to say such things behind his back, what were they really experiencing when they thought no one was listening? And what kind of leader was he if he didn't even know the truth? Jack had decided to visit his Chicago flagship location. It's the restaurant that had launched his empire, the place where it all began. If there were cracks in the system, they would be most visible there. He had called ahead using a fake name, made a reservation for one, and now he was about to step into his own creation as a complete stranger. Looking at himself in the mirror, he hardly recognized the man staring back. Gone was the confident CEO in his tailored suit, with the $300 haircut and the swagger that came from always being in control. In his place stood an ordinary middle-aged businessman, grabbing dinner alone after a long day. Jack chuckled bitterly. He had spent years carefully constructing a polished image of success, and now he was deliberately tearing it down to see what was beneath the surface. As he drove through the city in his beat-up Honda Civic, a car he had bought specifically for this undercover mission, Jack felt a strange combination of excitement and nervousness. When was the last time he'd felt this way? When had he last entered a situation where he had no idea what to expect? The neon sign of Brooks Steakhouse flickered ahead, and Jack's breath caught in his chest. Even from the outside, the place looked impressive. The sleek black exterior, the warm glow of the windows, the kind of elegance he had built his empire on. A line of luxury cars filled the valet parking area, a sea of Porsches, Mercedes, and Bentleys, the kind of cars he used to drive. But tonight, he was just another customer. The hostess, Sarah, greeted him with a polished smile, her professionalism as crisp as the restaurant's reputation. "Good evening. Welcome to Brooks Steakhouse. Do you have a reservation?" she asked. "Yes, under Anderson. Table for one," he replied. She quickly found his reservation and led him to a corner table, offering the kind of service that had become synonymous with the brand. "Your server will be right with you. Can I start you off with something to drink?" she asked, her voice warm but lacking energy. As Sarah walked away, Jack pulled out his phone, pretending to check emails, but in reality, he was observing the scene around him. The restaurant was packed, every table full, and the staff moved like a well-oiled machine. From a business perspective, it was perfection. But as he watched, he noticed things that his CEO perspective had missed. The way the servers moved, mechanical, efficient, but with no spark of life. The hollow smiles, the frantic pace, and the exhaustion that was only visible if you knew what to look for. Jack's eyes narrowed. Was this how he built his empire? On the backs of people whose humanity he hadn't considered? A young woman approached his table, and Jack's gaze lifted. She was in her mid-20s, with auburn hair pulled back into a ponytail, and green eyes that held a depth of compassion. Her name tag read Natalie. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice warm but tired. "Welcome to Brooks Steakhouse. I'm Natalie, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Jack could see the fatigue in her face, the subtle tension around her eyes, but she wore a professional smile that never faltered. She was clearly skilled, but there was something else about her. A quiet grace that suggested she took pride in her work, despite the circumstances. Jack smiled at her. "Thank you, Natalie. I've heard great things about this place." He had almost slipped up, almost said something about knowing every detail of the menu, but caught himself in time. "No, this is my first time. I'm in town for business. A colleague recommended the ribeye."
Natalie's smile warmed a fraction, her professionalism momentarily replaced by a hint of genuine engagement. "Your colleague has excellent taste. Our dry-aged ribeye is our signature dish. It's aged for 28 days, prepared with a special blend of seasonings." She paused, and Jack saw her fight to hold back a wave of exhaustion. "Would you like to hear about our other specialties as well?" Jack, sensing the shift in her demeanor, answered quickly, "No, the ribeye sounds perfect. Medium rare, please." He watched as she took the order, her hands steady and skilled. But there was something he couldn't ignore. The small burns on her fingertips, the kind that came from handling hot plates day after day. Her uniform was pristine, but he could see the frayed edges, the wear from constant use. As Natalie walked away, Jack's eyes followed her. He noticed the way she interacted with the other customers, effortless, kind, and attentive. She wasn't just taking orders, she was creating experiences. But there was something else. The way she glanced at the clock, the quick intake of breath when she thought no one was looking, the subtle limp in her step as she favored her left foot as if it were causing her pain. These were the details that numbers in reports could never capture. Over the next hour, Jack observed the other servers as well. Marcus, a young man not much older than 22, sprinted between tables, his face flushed with sweat despite the air-conditioned environment. Diana, an older woman, moved with caution, careful not to overexert herself, as though managing chronic pain while doing her job. There was something more in the air, a tension that had nothing to do with the natural stress of a busy restaurant. It came from knowing that any mistake could have consequences beyond just a disappointed customer. As his phone buzzed with a reminder about an early board meeting the next day, Jack's stomach twisted. Tomorrow, he would sit in a boardroom and review charts and profit margins that reduced his employees to numbers on a spreadsheet. He would discuss their futures without understanding their struggles, their dreams, or their humanity. The irony was suffocating. Natalie returned with his steak, and Jack took a moment to savor the presentation, the perfect medium-rare ribeye, the sides just as flawless. But as he cut into the steak, he noticed something that made his heart race. Natalie's hands were trembling as she placed the plate down. It wasn't from nerves, but from exhaustion. She was clearly struggling to keep up with the relentless pace of the night. Her voice, when she asked if everything looked good, had a slight tremor to it. "It looks perfect," Jack said, though he could feel the weight of what he had just noticed. As Natalie walked away, Jack observed her again. She paused by the server station, closed her eyes, and rubbed her temples. For the first time all evening, he saw her drop the professional mask. She looked utterly exhausted, as if the weight of every shift had finally caught up to her. But then, just as quickly, another customer called her name, and she was back to her routine, her exhaustion hidden once again. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Jack mechanically finished his meal, paid his bill, and left a generous tip. But his mind was elsewhere. On Natalie's note, he had to know what was written on it. She had recognized him immediately, but still she chose to serve him, to risk her job by giving him a note that could cost her everything. Why? What was driving her to do this? After a few minutes of deliberation, Jack carefully unfolded the note, the words hitting him like a punch to the gut. "I know who you are, Mr. Reynolds. I recognized you the moment you walked in. I've seen your photos in the business magazines, and I admire what you've built. But I need you to know something that your reports and surveys can't tell you. This place is killing us." The words were like a cold splash of water, shaking Jack to his core. The note detailed the daily struggles of his employees, their long hours, their constant fear of making mistakes, and their struggle to survive. Natalie had written it all down, risking everything to tell him the truth that he had been blind to for years. As Jack read on, he realized that he had built an empire on the backs of people who had been invisible to him, reduced to mere statistics in his quarterly reports. But now, Natalie had made him see them, and for the first time in years, Jack understood the true cost of his success.